We're almost a month into the new year, and many of us are deep into the analytics of 2025 performance and not loving the numbers. To help understand why metrics took such a dive last year and what we could do differently in the year ahead to measure performance, I'm joined today by Anthony Rinaldi, Senior Director of Insights and Analytics at Yext. Let's get into it. Anthony, it is so great to have you on the visibility brief. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So before we jump into our episode for today, I would love for you to explain to everyone what you do at Yext as our Senior Director of Insights and Analytics. Sounds super cool.
Sure. I've been at Yext for going on 7 years now, and the team that I lead here is called Insights and Analytics. Historically, what that's meant was half the folks on my team are really good at insights, half the folks on my team are really good at analytics. So the analytics folks, very technical, right? They're getting into the data. They're living and breathing in data. The insights folks are much better at, they're technical, they're data literate, but they're taking the insights, they're taking the data and turning it into something that matters. So what that means from like a week to week, month to month basis is that we often live with clients and with product. So we are good storytellers. So we'll take data and go out to clients and try to find out what's resonating and what they care about and what we should be looking at and what kind of research we should be doing. And we'll take those findings, and if it's good, if it's useful, if it's resonating, we'll take that back to product and tell them this is the direction that people care. So instead of the super technical people saying, this number's good or this number's bad or this number's up or this number's down, it's my team that's looking a little more holistically and trying to add business value and context.
So 7 years. You've been out a little bit recently, though, for paternity leave. Is that right?
Yeah, just got back right before the holidays, which I guess means I got back right after the holidays.
Well, congratulations. I'm curious what that experience was like for you because the world is moving so quickly.
It was fulfilling. It was purposeful, which is like a really overarching way of putting it. I feel like I'm more important. I mean, I am the most important thing for now somebody. It's been fun. It's been fun to unplug. And I think more specifically, he was born in the middle of October. And I joked to my wife that this feels like it was the first autumn I've had since college because we get wrapped up in work and it's like, hey, it looked really nice out today. I hope I get out before the sun goes down. And because I wasn't working for that whole autumn, it was, hey, it's really nice out. Let's go on a 3 hour walk. Like, hey, it's really, really nice out. And that's just not something I feel like we get on a year by year basis. You go to the office or you work from home and you see the leaves look nice and hopefully we get a nice weekend. But if it rains, then I don't know, you get single digit hours of like autumn, which was fun.
Yeah.
And I know we're here to talk about AI, and I think it's a fun conversation to be the data guy. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, "What are you tracking? How are you tracking it?" And a lot of my friends that know me really well know that I have spreadsheets and dashboards for my life. I can tell you when the last time I went to the movies is. I can tell you the last time I got a haircut. I can tell you the last time I had 8 ounces or 8 cups of water. I just have dashboards, and
I
so
have
people like,
so many follow-up questions. So
yeah,
are you, taking these spreadsheets and dashboards and applying them for your son? Like, are you tracking all of his growth progress and those sorts of things?
that's, I think, all of my friends and coworkers' first question. They're like, "I've seen your movie dashboard. I've seen your personal dashboard. I've seen your habits dashboard. I know how many times you've been on a flight lately." And when it comes to my son, the answer is no. And it philosophically, I think it relates to my opinion on AI in overarching, which is may be controversial, but like I feel strongly that AI has a place. Of course, I wouldn't be here if it didn't think it did. But I want to keep it right now pretty far away from the soft things, right? I don't, I'm not on X having fun looking at the generated images because I think, for example, um, I saw somebody say that AI should be used to do the laundry so that we can make art. AI should not be used to make art so that we can do the laundry or replace laundry with coding.
Yes.
So I take that approach with my son now, and I'm like, you know what? There's probably a way to automate some of this. There's probably a way to track some of this. There's probably a way to use AI or to use data to know when his next nap should be, or to know when his next, well, feeding's different because that keeps him alive, but to know when his next whatever should be. And it just doesn't seem like the right application. It just doesn't. It feels like it's the art section where you're, trying to automate the fun part, the figuring it out part.
Yeah.
And I want to stray from there. Again, I'll use AI to do the things to make my life easier, but I don't want to use AI to do the things that makes my life more fun.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, because, yeah, occasionally I jump in and say, "Oh my god, this is so powerful, it should do everything." And I, would prefer to keep the human side of raising a child alive right now.
Well, it's interesting. Two things occurred to me. The first is that, first of all, AI guiding you on kids' nap times or whatever, the kid's going to do what he wants to do. So good luck with that. Um, this is applies to parenting books as well as any parent will tell you. But it's interesting when you think about AI automating the things that we don't want to do, so that we have time to do the things that we love. I read this really fascinating study about machines automating housework. We used to have to do our laundry with washboard tubs and by hand and dishes by hand and all sorts of things like that, building a fire to cook dinner.
I'll take your
And
word.
there was yeah. So there's this study about how much time people spent doing housework in 1900 before all of these modern innovations came along and how much time they spend doing housework today. Do you have any idea what the difference is?
I imagine it was the majority of the day. So,
We spend more time cleaning our houses today because our standards went up. So we're like, oh, now that we can do laundry with a machine, we're going to do it every week. Now that we can do this, we are. So it's really interesting. Like, I'm curious that the AI, as we automate more things with it, are we actually going to get time back to do the things we love? Or are we just going to raise our standards or start to think, there's just going to be more, more, more.
it's a totally different conversation, and I'll stop it before it gets that far, but it reminds me of my life right now, day to day. I have become addicted to Claude Code, which has been a revelation for me because I've always been like, "Hey, this AI coding is interesting, but it's still telling me what to do, it's not doing it." And now that it can, my time, quote unquote, coding, and I use the scare quotes because I'm not doing it, has gone from 0 to a lot. So, I've been using Claude Code to automate some of my, like, fantasy leagues that can't be done on bigger sites. Fantasy movie league that I'm in, for example. So, yeah, the amount of time that I spent coding in these leagues historically was 0. And now I can't stop doing this on a nightly basis because 'cause I'm like, "Hey, this should be in the application, and this should be in the app." So it's similar to that housework thing where you're like, "It must have made the fantasy movie league coding faster." And I'm like, "There didn't used to be any."
Right.
And
Right.
now on a nightly basis, I'm spending, I don't know, however long I have before my son needs his first overnight feeding from when he went to bed. But it's interesting. You're right. Like, on paper, it should have shrunk it. In reality, I just have the next idea and the next idea and the next idea and end up living in that, just like your laundry needs to be washed more now.
Right, right. It just, the technology unlocks our creativity for all of the different ways that we can use it. And that's a blessing and a curse, I think. So that's been great. So you've been back at work now for a couple of weeks, and I'm curious how you felt getting back into it. Were you like really staying on top of what was happening in the world, or did you genuinely get a chance to check out and be present with your family?
Yeah, I checked out. I don't know if my bosses are listening. Checked out entirely. I know how it felt on the other side. Once in a while, I had an inkling of a work question, but stopped myself every time from asking anybody that. Um, but I'll give you an example. Um, Over the holidays, I went to a birthday party slash Christmas party for a friend's child. I remember going to that exact same party 2 years ago and showing people GPT-2 or whatever, GPT-4. And at the time, there wasn't the chat interface. You had to use the dev console.
Mm.
And I said to my friends, I'm trying to explain what an LLM is. We've known that at Yext for a little while. We've been using it for Yext search and answers historically. So I knew what an LLM was in terms of it's going to predict the next word and it's going to write and it's going to seem like it's writing from its own brain. And I'm explaining that to my friends at this Christmas party slash birthday party 2 years ago. And we're sitting down and we say, write this like a haiku, or write this like a poem, or write this like an angry tweet. And they got it, but like we're 2 years removed from that. And that same person I was explaining it to said, I've been using AI to help me write this book that I'm getting published on Amazon, self-publishing, whatever, whatever. So I can tell you from my personal life and my friend groups how much this has evolved. I have no idea how much this has evolved professionally. Like I the last thing I'll give you the floor in a second. The last thing I think of is like the movie The Big Short. There's this time right before the housing crisis, right before the bubble bursts, where I think there's a quote somewhere in the movie where they say, when you start getting a stock quote from your hairdresser or whatever it is in the movie, something's happening. Like
Yes.
we're at a bubble. I'm not saying AI is a bubble, but we're at an inflection point. And when I start hearing from the guy who didn't know what an LLM was 2 years ago at this birthday party, that he's using chat whatever to build whatever at home, so this is the hairdresser giving me a stock quote.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I tell you, it's making a difference in my world, but you tell me, like, does this matter? Like in the market
It is
world?
absolutely. I mean, on a personal level, I had a similar experience, showing ChatGPT to my folks, and it felt like a magic trick for them, right? Like, whoa, it's writing, it's doing all of these things. Now they figured out how to unlock a couple of little use cases that they really like. I think about it in terms of the impact on marketers. I think a year ago, marketers were still a little skeptical about how much of our time and energy to invest in AI search, right? We were like, oh, yeah, lots of people are using it. It's interesting. They're still kind of dipping their toe in the water, but we're going to stay focused and obsessed about Google and our proven playbooks. There was a tipping point at some point this year. I thinking more in the fall, where everyone really sat up, took it very seriously. I think it was tied to the sharp decline in web traffic when they actually started to see the numbers play out, and they were like, "Whoa, AI overviews are stealing the click. People are starting searches in LLMs. I really need to think about this and figure it out." That's, I think, when it became really real for marketers.
Yeah, from the insight side, like those are conversations that I have to have with businesses all the time. I used to get X number of impressions. I now get Y number of impressions. My traffic looked like this last year. My traffic looks like this year. And in a pre-COVID world, it was fun to have these conversations because every year, everybody was getting more, more web traffic. Not the internet was young, but like more web traffic, more reservations, more restaurants, more whatever, especially direction clicks on Google because people were going places. And then those conversations began to be less and less fun, right? COVID happened and where fewer people are clicking at directions across the board. And that's not a problem with your business. That's just the world's changing. And it feels similar now where people are looking at these traditional metrics like impressions or clicks. And you might be getting fewer in the places that you historically have cared more about. And it's nice that that conversation is getting up to the actual marketers because we need to make sure we're looking at the right things. I can tell you boots on the ground, things are changing, but if your number one KPI as a marketer is X and that's no longer hittable, then we have to start looking elsewhere. The adoption conversation about these models, you mentioned, having these conversations in traditional or not so traditional places. It's interesting because you have two trains of thought. You have the person maybe like you that's comfortable going AI, 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 and then back to Google. Maybe not comfortable like making a conversion in AI yet, but you've had the entire conversation in Google. Sorry, in AI. I gave a talk in Paris at a breakfast briefing last spring where we were looking at like, a search journey a year ago. Question one, romantic restaurants in Montmartre. Question two, best burger in Montmartre. Question three, is this restaurant open? Question four, make reservation. And what used to be 5 searches in Google and then 1 click in Google is now, you know, romantic and best and open and burger, those are all AI things. And the last one is make a reservation. Let me go back to Google. So our clients were seeing what used to be 5 impressions in one click is now 1 impression in one click. Good news, I think historically the marketer should have cared more about the click. Bad news is I think a lot of marketers are still judged on how many times somebody actually saw your piece of content.
There's a big mindset shift that needs to happen, and I'm curious because, as the person who leads our analytics team, data, you've lived the data every day. I think marketers have been maybe a little overly reliant on the metrics. I sometimes think that the numbers allow you to kind of step back and avoid thinking at a deeper level about what might be going on. And that crutch is being taken away, right? If Google was growing year over year over year, maybe despite the decisions we were making, we get a pat on the back for doing a great job. But were we really? And now the reverse is happening where we might be doing an amazing job, but the numbers aren't showing that because the environment's changing. I'm curious how you're having conversations with people about how to like detach personally from the emotional response they're probably having to the fact that their numbers look terrible.
Um, Good news, bad news. It's about it's about looking at the right metrics.
Mhm.
And an impression was always fluffy, right? These different traditional search engines, right? To be honest, 1 month they could just change the way they count impressions, right? You were judged on getting 1 million impressions a year, and all of a sudden they say half those impressions were duplicates because somebody moved the map, and when they move the map, the page refreshes, and when the page refreshes, you got another impression. So like historically, the way we counted impressions were like a nice pat on the back for marketers, but even a marketer's boss would say the goal is to get more revenue, right? So how do we tie this thing that we're doing as marketers into the thing that matters? And the thing that matters is getting somebody in the door or getting somebody to buy something or getting a lead or getting a whatever. And that hasn't changed. Unfortunately, attribution is always tough. So for example, the really easy example I gave was impressions versus clicks. Impressions are always fluffy. Clicks happened, right? Like I don't care how many times you got seen. I do care how many times somebody I keep using traditional search, get direction, phone call, website click, how often they did the thing, right? Because doing the thing is the closest we get to spending money or becoming a lead or becoming a quote or becoming a whatever. The problem is that is still pretty traditional. Because as a marketer, what do you actually want? It's the thing. It's not did they make a phone call, it's did they make a reservation. It's not did they get directions, it's did they buy the new bag in the store.
We lose that predictive ability though, right? When we can't see all of the things that lead up to it. We've got these frameworks and these models that say this number of impressions historically drives this number of clicks, which will then result in this number of reservations. And I think that's the thing that's making some people just feel so uncomfortable about this change.
Yeah, it's very I think uncomfortable is a good word, because there's a lot that gets lost between the thing and the money, right? The phone
Yes.
call and the money, the impression and the phone call, the impression and that's an attribution question, and as a marketer, everybody's job is 90% to do that. How do you make sure that you are conveying that the world isn't falling or that the sky isn't falling? It's you look at 2 things. Our impressions are down 80% year over year. Is our business, right? And if the business is actually holding steady or going up, then the answer is the impressions weren't the thing you should have been tracking all along. It's not easy for folks in the marketing world to wrap their head around because, they've historically pegged their entire career maybe to that one big number. But you can make people feel a little bit better by saying something's clearly changing because this number isn't what it used to be, but that doesn't, we're still getting the same number of sales or more. So what are the other channels? And as soon as these AI models and these large language models start giving us better data, if we could tell you that, there's this new channel worth this amount and here's what it's driving. But until that happens, I think everybody has to be comfortable being uncomfortable by saying, just because our impressions are down doesn't mean this isn't working.
Anthony, I know you've been working on a project around a different way to measure visibility and impact. Can you walk us through, first of all, why this is such an important initiative? And then let's kind of dive into how you've been thinking about it.
Historically, it's been very easy for us to tell our clients how often you do or don't show up. We just talked about this for 15 minutes. You did get this, you now get this. When things go down, they want to know two more things. They want to know how often could they show up, right? And they want to know how well do they show up, right? So how often could they show up is difficult, right? The example I use all the time is telehealth. During COVID, being the number one telehealth company in the world was very important. Right now, being the number one telehealth in the company in the world is much less important. So if you're doing everything right in telehealth, you're still going to get fewer impressions, clicks, conversions, whatever. So knowing how often you could show up is an important thing to tell you, are my numbers good or bad? But what we really want to look at now is not how often could you show up, but when somebody's looking, are you there? Are you there?
Mm.
Right? So not are they searching more or less for this thing, but when they do, how well do you show up? So what we get for that is rank, right? Historically, we could tell you that when somebody searches for burgers near me, you are number one, or you are number two, or you are number three, or you are number four. And the development of Scout at Yext has really helped us paint a picture of that, right? Because now our data, especially my data, when I'm looking at this for clients, is not limited to Yext clients. The data I get to look at now is we ran scans, we ran searches, right? We're essentially teleporting to these different places around the world and running a search for burgers, and we're writing down everything that comes back. We might not work with any of the people that come back in a certain search, but we still get that data. So I could tell you that in this postal code, when I search for burgers, here's the top 40 that came back. I can also tell you everything that they're doing, right? So the list and the things. So for example, I could tell you the first person that showed up had 100 photos and the second person that showed up had 50 photos. I can show you that the first person that showed up had 1,000 reviews and the second person that showed up had 2,000 reviews. And that's interesting. So let me pull this back to say what people want to know is how well do you show up when somebody searches for burgers? That sounds easy when you have rank, right? You showed up first, or you showed up second, or you showed up third. I have a problem with that because rank is really contextual, right? Did you rank one because you were next to where we searched? Or did you rank one because all of the memory that our search engine might have had when running it? Or did you rank one, whatever, right? I think rank is like, it's a really good point in time, I don't know, flag, but it's not entirely descriptive.
And it sounds like what you're saying is marketers may perceive rank as a foolproof, like absolute number. And in fact, it's not. There are a lot of different things that could influence user to user or day to day what that rank looks like. And so it might be like an impression of at that moment in time.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. A rank is important. However, if we're searching for urgent care near me and you are the best urgent care in the world, but you're 2 miles from where we searched, you're not going to show up first because Google is smart enough, or these engines are smart enough to say, "Oh my God, they need an urgent care. Let's give them this one. They're close to it." So I think rank is really, really a nice data point to have, but I don't think it should be the be all end all. One of the things that we're working on at Yext is coming up with a more I don't want to say predictive, but projected rank, right? It's a little harder to wrap your head around, but instead of where did you rank, maybe where could you have or should you have ranked based on all of these things that came back with you. I'm going to take this into a sports analogy and then in a minute take it into a board game analogy. But
Thanks for the preview.
the sports one, I'm a big baseball fan. So in baseball, we have somebody hits the ball and it either became a successful hit or it did not become a successful hit, right? So your batting average is high or is it low? But you can do everything right. You can hit the ball incredibly hard. You can hit it, 110 miles an hour, and you can hit it on a line drive. But if somebody's standing there, it's going to look like you might as well have struck out, right? And in baseball, we think of that as batting average or expected batting average, right? So hitting a ball really hard and hitting it really low has an expected batting average of something It's almost always going to be a hit, but you can't control for the fielder was standing there, or you can't control for the wind, right? I could just tell you what should have happened. So I wanted to, I and the data science team and the research team wanted to think about this not with what happened on this random day at this random location, where did you rank, but maybe where should you have ranked. So I said, sports analogy, here we go to a board game analogy. We're starting to use something called ELO score. And it doesn't stand for ELO, does not stand for anything. It's the last name of the guy who invented it. But essentially, an ELO score is most often thought of with chess for a rating system. So I am a 1,000 ELO, or I'm a 1,500 ELO, or I'm a 500 ELO. And what chess and college football and all of these sports that need to rank teams or players or whatever have come up with is a scoring system that isn't just a point in time score, it's overtime. So you might start as the number one ranked player or the number one ranked football team or the number one ranked burger joint, right? But you're only as good as your next match, right? On the next one, did you lose to the person that used to be number two? Not that big of a deal. Did you lose to the person that used to be number 20? Something's up, right? And as at Yext, as we continue to scan these locations and these areas and these keywords and all of this stuff, we can tell you over time which which businesses have continued to win, which ones have continued to lose, and we can start to think of these as not actual ranking, but ELO ranking. So, for example, that burger joint in I don't know, central Pennsylvania, instead of saying that it was the number 5 ranked burger joint on this particular day, I would tell you that it deserved to be number 2 because historically it has beaten the people ahead of it or it has lost to the people below it, and it's giving credit for that in that. So not to get too technical as I did, but the idea of these projected scores or the predicted scores or these ELO scores and ELO ranks that we're going to start to surface in this Yext research is not how did you rank on this particular search results page on this particular day with these particular conditions, but instead, how should you have based on everything that we know about you?
So as a marketer, I'm a very pragmatic person. So I'm always thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? So what I'm hearing is that this type of report no longer ranks me in a vacuum, but also helps me understand how I am performing relative to the competition. And I think that's much more reflective of a real world environment because every consumer is making decisions with you in context of a competitor. So I really love that. The second thing I'm hearing though is this is telling me basically, am I doing all of the things I am supposed to be doing to rank? So even if I might any given day be doing well, if my ELO score is a little lower, it's telling me I need to roll up my sleeves and get to work and address some of the key factors that might be contributing to a lower score. Am I catching that right?
Exactly. The baseball analogy again is would if you go 0 for 4 in a day, but you hit the ball hard every time, is that really worse than just hitting a dribbler that found a hole 4 times in a game? Eventually, it's gonna catch up to you. So as a business, as a marketer, yeah, you might ranked 1 or 2 or 3 in this search in this random day, but if you don't have any photos and you don't have any reviews and you don't have a good rating and everybody else is catching up to you in these operational metrics, congrats on your number 2 for today. But, like, I wouldn't expect that to continue. So I would much rather talk about these, predictive things.
Super interesting. I think about it too. The analogy I use is me training to run a 10K. So I could do everything possible to be as fit as possible for that race, right? Eat right, get all my practice runs in. But if I show up at that race and I am going against Olympic athlete, there is no way, even if I run my best, that I'm going to win that race. And so that might be the case for my ELO score too, right? I could be doing my best and still lose. So maybe that's where I focus some of my paid. In other cases, maybe I slacked and I didn't train, but I'm going against, I don't know, some people who didn't train at all. Maybe I have a shot.
Yeah, it's fun because in our platform in Scout, we show delta to benchmark, right? Or we show your numbers in the benchmarks. And I think it's really fun to scroll through as a business and find 2 different locations that have the same number of photos. right? So for example, you look at a location that has 1,000 photos and another location that has 1,000 photos. And for a restaurant in Iowa, 1,000 photos is like twice as many photos as you need. But for a restaurant in New York City, it might not be enough. So just like the analogy of getting ready to run your race, you need to know what you're up against. Because I can't, as the almost the agency with some of these clients, I can't say your locations need to get to 500 reviews. I can't, because some locations 200 some locations 5 reviews might be enough because none of the restaurants or none of the retail stores or none of the providers near them have any reviews. And some 500 is not even going to come close to the mark. So it's really fun in our platform because we contextualize and localize the benchmarks and your peers to say not how many photos should you have, but how many photos of the folks that are around you have. And it's interesting, especially when you look at something, to double down on this, but when you look at something like completion rate, right? So we have the ability in our platform to look at the core fields within a Google listing and say, do they have their name and their address and their phone number and their hours and however other many things. And we can say that you should have 100% completion rate. And it's really fun to see two different businesses that have 100% completion rate. One says that's net even with the benchmark because it's an area where everybody's putting in the work. And one says that they're like crushing the benchmark. And when you look at something like a percentage, you're like, how can 100% not be really, really good? It's because in certain industries or in certain locations or areas or neighborhoods, it's table stakes. And yeah, you got to know who you're running against.
Absolutely. It's the nature of competition. It's the number one thing as marketers is to understand the competition and how you differentiate against them and how to stand out. Anthony, this has been a fascinating conversation. We are running short on time. I'm curious, just one final question. As you have been looking through the data, was there anything that really surprised you?
Plenty. Is there anything that I want to say publicly that has surprised me? It's a good question. I'm not going to give you a big ticket thing yet, but what I do want to say is some of the ways that we're looking at this, we're starting to look at this um, slicing and dicing in ways that we never really have. So because we have brands within these results page, I can roll those up to a parent brand, right? How many Dunkin' Donutses were there, right? And because we have the entire, nation of brands, I can tell you how many locations does Dunkin' Donuts have generally that have ever showed up. So what's really interesting and something that we're starting to look into is both in this ELO score and in actual traditional rankings. How hard is it for the big brands? How hard is it for the small brands? How hard is it for the mid-sized brands? I think we all have different. I don't know the exact answer to these questions yet. We're looking into it, but like I bet we all have hypotheses about the number one ranking spot and whether or not oftentimes that's an enterprise scaled company or whether or not that's a mom and pop bakery. And now that we have a data set that's, hundreds of millions of companies large with scanning 2,500 postal codes with 100 different business types. Now that we have all this data, we can start to do that type of analysis. So I don't, maybe I'll tease what we're working on. I don't want to give a big ticket number until we're ready, but it's really fascinating to say businesses that are really close to where we searched and businesses that are really far from where we searched, businesses that have a lot of locations and businesses that have a single location, and just, extrapolate from there. But yeah, we have some pretty exciting stuff happening.
Spoken like a true data scientist. I love it. We would love to have you back when the findings are in a place where we can share them more publicly. And we'll keep an eye on Yext research. I know that that's the place where we generally get this out into the world. In the meantime, Anthony, enjoy the time with your son. It goes by really fast. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see you again soon.
Cool. Thanks, Rebecca.
And thank you all for tuning in today for the Yext Visibility Brief. And we'll catch you again next time.